Hi, Anna. Thanks for jumping in and joining us. We'll get started here in just a couple of minutes. I want to give a few more people time to log in. Hi, Neil. Thanks for jumping in. We'll get started here in about 1 minute. It's like that 30 seconds of silence when you're a kid in school and you had to put your head down and be good. So hi, everybody. I'm Tina Cannon. I'm the Executive Director of the Austin LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Thank you guys very much for taking the time to join us today. In the midst of everything that's going on, sometimes it's also makes sense to kind of refocus and reset and talk about the future and future planning. Our chamber is the oldest and largest chamber in the state of Texas. We've been around since 1977, and we're here to serve the members of our community, both the LGBT and our allied partners. Part of that is a big thank you to our core partners who, without their support and contributions, we could not do what we do and bring the programming that we bring to you every day. Our chamber has been in overdrive during COVID and has a full resource page of everything and anything that you need to know about COVID, all the resources that are available, as well as a page of all of our past webinars where you will find today's session probably about 24 hours after this event. In case you missed anything or you didn't take a note that you wanted to, you can always go back and rewatch or share with friends. So today I wanted to welcome Chase Kincannon. Chase is not only the board chair for the Austin LGBT Chamber of Commerce, he's a good friend of mine. He is a third generation financial planner and has ventured into the rental space. And I know I have asked him questions in the past few months about his experience and what I might consider as I think about the future planning and whether or not this is a right fit for me. And so I think everybody's been on Zoom meetings before, but just in case, we'll take questions through the Q&A. So if you have a question during the programming, just drop it in there and then I will get it to Chase. In the event that we don't get to your question, feel free to email Chase directly. I'm pretty sure he's going to have his contact information on the slide for you here in a little bit. So without further ado, I will turn the screen over to Chase. If you can pop your slides in.
Absolutely. Let me make sure I do this right. Let's try this out. And you should have my slide deck.
Yay.
So we can all start off with a rigorous debate over the punctuation of the word don'ts. We've consulted with many local experts and exhausted our chamber resources only to find out that nobody really knows. So send your complaints to membership at austinlgbtchamber.com along with your check for $400 for basic business membership. Hi, everybody. I'm Chase Kincannon. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you guys today. I'm really excited to visit with you about my experience and knowledge about vacation rentals and how to get into it and all the different ways you can do it. This is a really broad topic, so I know there's no way that I can hold your attention long enough to cover everything. So I've tried to just kind of touch on a bunch of different topics and give you an overview, and then we'll leave time hopefully at the end to answer more specific questions if anybody has any. So with that, I'm going to get started. First off, a little bit about me. Why am I the one talking about this and why the heck should you listen to me? I have a degree in history, which has nothing to do with anything because I didn't want to be a teacher or a museum curator when I grew up. So the point of me including that is to say you don't need any specific background or knowledge or training in order to get into this industry. But there is a lot of questions you need answered. There are a lot of questions you need answers to to make smart decisions moving into this. But it doesn't matter if you're an engineer or a social worker or flipping burgers at Walmart. This is like, does Walmart serve burgers? I meant McDonald's. This is an option for you. My vacation rentals are located just outside Big Bend National Park, actually between the National Park and Big Bend Ranch State Park. I fell in love with that area when I was a tour guide. I gave Jeep River and ATV tours back for a winter season in 2005, 2006. After that, I started a professional career in insurance and finance, have been doing that ever since. And this has turned into a really fun, really interesting side gig for me while I have my real job here in Austin. I purchased the property that my vacation rentals are situated on in 2009. It was bare land. We started developing it in 2017, opened up in 18, and then very quickly got some pretty impressive accolades. I was surprised and impressed. In 2020, VRBO has named my property the #1 up-and-coming destination of all the VRBO listings in the world, and they're really promoting it. And then I got a note from GoDaddy that hosts my website, and we're going to talk about marketing. I have achieved their 100th percentile for web traffic for like websites, for the types of websites that have vacation rentals. So I put all that up there, not to be immodest, but to show you that what I'm doing seems to be working and might have a little bit of perspective or experience or expertise that I can share with you guys. So I do have 2 disclaimers. Number 1, because I am a professional financial advisor, I have to tell you none of this presentation is financial advice. It's not tax advice. It's not legal advice. This is just me talking as a vacation rental owner about my experience. If you think this is something you want to do, you need to consult with a tax professional, a legal professional, a financial professional. The second and way more important caveat is that I suck at PowerPoint. These are my notes to help me remember the important parts I want to share with you. People who read slide decks clearly don't know what they're talking about. That's supposed to be a joke. I can't tell if anybody's laughing.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Okay. Now I'm realizing how hard it is for Colbert to do his monologues with absolutely no feedback. Tina says that I'm pretty. You should be watching me talk instead of the slide deck. Anyway, as long as nobody takes any of this too seriously, we'll all get through it just fine. So with that said, I wanted to give you a real quick kind of tour of my property. I have 2 vacation rentals, 2 houses that I built out of shipping containers sunk into the side of a cliff that faces the Chistos Mountains in Big Bend National Park. So this is the main house. It's a 40-foot shipping container mated to a 20-foot shipping container. Can you see my mouse when I do that? Can I point?
Yes.
Okay, this side is a bedroom. It's got a king-size bed in it. There's a bathroom back here in the corner with full shower and amenities. I've got a full kitchen, a dining area, and a living room area with a fold-out couch. This is the little fire pit area, and then right off camera over here, the cliffside drops down into a canyon that goes down to the little Terlingua ghost town. The second rental that I have is only about 150 feet away from the first one, but they face different directions and have different views. This is also a 40-foot shipping container mated to a 20-foot shipping container. This has 2 king-size beds in it. It's cantilevered off the side of the hill. And the views from my place are about 20 miles in any different direction. And they include the national park, the state park, the United States, and Mexico. A really important part of what's happened for me, and we're going to talk about this more, is the fact that we're in a great location with really unique lodging. The fact that we built out of shipping containers, I think, has gone a long way to help us make this a successful venture. So if you're thinking about doing something like this, we want to talk about screening ourselves to whether this is a good fit. And there are a million different situations you can come from, and I don't have enough time to cover all the different ways you could do this. But there is typically an inverse relationship between startup costs and the amount of risk for a new business. If you have low startup costs, then the risk of it being successful tends to be high, versus if you have high startup costs, then your risk of failure tends to be low. This is one of those that has higher startup costs. There's a lot of ways to leverage assets that you have to turn them into a lot more assets, but you need to be able to have some kind of savings or access to cash to deploy. You're probably going to need have to have available credit. It needs to be good. If you're going to do financing for a new house, if you're going to try to get a second mortgage for a second home, typically it's more difficult than your mortgage on your primary residence. You're going to have to come up with 10 or 20% down. That said, a lot of time it's really good to make sure you have at least 20% equity in your current home before you even think about doing this, because you have extra costs on your homestead mortgage. And all that said, once you've lined up financing, one of the most common reasons I see new businesses fail in their first 3 years is because they didn't start out with sufficient cash flow to have emergency reserves to get them through unusual situations. And up until about 2 or 3 months ago, I heard a lot of, oh, that'll never happen. And now that everyone is doing what we're doing, it has happened. And the vacation rental industry was hit hard. So we'll talk in a little bit. There's a bit of a house of cards for people who have over leveraged themselves and put themselves in positions where they can't support their interests without the cash flow from incoming rentals. There's 3 sort of soft skill requirements that you've got to have if you want to do this, and they're all inclusive. It's not 2 out of 3. You need knowledge, interest, and time. Knowledge is something you can acquire if you have enough interest. If this is something that really fascinates you, if you're passionate about it, then you can be really successful. But if the sole reason you're looking at doing this is to create mailbox money, diversified income stream, but you're not really that interested in running a vacation rental, a micro hotel, then don't do it. There are far easier ways to make money, maybe not as much, depends on your location, but you really have to have that passion for what you're doing. And the last is time. There's a lot of different ways to set up your business model, whether you're hiring property managers or not, how active you want to be in it. I wasn't able to do this for a long time simply because getting my planning practice up to speed required far too many hours out of the day. Not to mention the Chamber of Commerce took up a lot of my time. Tina, look at you. It predates Tina, it's not her fault. But it does consume some time. So really you need all 3 of these in order to screen yourself as a good candidate for whether this is something you want to do. As far as paying for it, where to find financing? If you're fortunate enough to have cash lying around, to be able to just go buy a property or build a property, good on you. That's going to make everything so much easier because you don't have a bank breathing down your neck, checking your business plan, worried about what's going to happen when there's a shutdown and you don't have any rental income. Some people look at home equity lines of credit or home equity loans where you borrow against the equity you've developed in your home. There's an inherent danger in that, excuse me, because if you experience a cash flow problem, now all of a sudden you've put your primary residence at risk if you're unable to make those payments. So generally that's not advisable, but in certain circumstances you could do it. Excuse me, I'm going to mute myself for just a second. Sorry about that. Private investors. I've been approached by people I know who are interested in investment ventures like this. Typically, they have some experience in vacation real estate or real estate in general. In my experience, as a friend of mine, a business colleague of mine who owns several properties and had recently liquidated one, so he had some extra cash, and he said, talk to me about your expansion plan. Maybe we can make that happen faster if you're willing to take on a business partner. There are people like this out there. Ask around. I guarantee you, you know someone who knows people like this, and that's always a possibility. Of course, the con against that pro is that you're going to split the ownership. If that's the only way you can get into it, it may be a better option than not doing it all. doing it at all. It's also a decent chance that you're going to have a really good experience with that if this person has some experience in vacation rental markets. Can I use my retirement funds? Again, this is not in any way financial planning advice, anything like that. I've heard of people who use their IRAs or 401ks, borrow against them, or they put a property in their IRA. This can be really problematic if you don't plan on selling your this house before you retire. If there's some unexpected event and you need liquidity in that IRA, then you've tied it all up in property that creates a lot of problems. So if that's an option you're considering, I strongly recommend that you visit with both your financial professional and your tax professional. And then probably the most common way people do this is a second home mortgage. Talk to your bank, especially if you've got good credit. They're excited to do these. Interest rates are incredibly low right now. Even on second home mortgages, you're gonna pay a slightly higher rate than you would on your primary residence because the banks see it as a slightly higher risk. However, most of the mortgage options are still out there, a 15-year, 30-year. You're just gonna pay a slightly higher interest rate typically, and you're gonna have to come up with a larger down payment because it has to be a conventional loan. FHA loans aren't available for second homes. Okay, what factors shape a business plan? One of the things that I get a lot of questions about is, should I hire property managers and what do they cost? We'll dive into that in the next couple of slides. But when we talk about proximity, how far away is this property? If you live in Austin, you want to own a property in Austin, that makes it a lot more practical to self-manage. I have colleagues who own properties that are several states away or several hours away, and they're a blend of whether they manage it themselves by either hiring neighbors in that location to help clean and flip and things like that, or they hire a property manager to do it for them. The seasonality of the location is going to have a huge impact on your business plan. Is this a place that people visit year-round, or is it a ski resort that nobody visits in the summer? Or is it a beach that no one visits in the winter? These are huge impacts, and the demand impacts the rates you're able to charge. So if you've got high season rates, but they're only for 3 months out of the year, you've got to factor that in when you're looking at cash flows. Cash flow, in my mind, for these, if we're talking about gross revenue, it's a function of, I'm going to keep this really simple, 2 factors. It's your nightly rate times your occupancy rate. And virtually all my decision making about this business goes through that paradigm, goes through that function. Is this going to improve my occupancy? Is this going to improve my nightly rate? And then lastly, when you're building a business plan for this, your startup costs, whether it's financing the property itself, building a property, improving the property, setting it up as a vacation rental, because you can't, because you do need certain fittings that you've got to set the house up to be a rental, not just a residence. And then after you've spent all that money, you still need sufficient cash reserves in your business, as well as personal cash reserves. Because of this type of business, and we're sort of blending together my side gig versus a real job, you cannot deplete your personal cash reserves for personal emergencies to fund a business, or else you're putting both at risk. In a lot of discussions with people who own vacation rentals, I've heard a lot of different versions of this, but my favorite is the proximity rule. You need to find a place that's either a 4-hour drive or a nonstop flight from where you live. I've got a good friend who has a condo on Hilton Head Island, and to get there, she's got to fly from Austin to Atlanta, make a connection to get to Savannah, then rent a car and drive an hour to Hilton Head Island. So it takes her a solid day of travel to get there, and she's exhausted. So when they want to use their vacation property for themselves, and she's got kids and they love going there, it's not a weekend trip. You've got to plan a little bit more time to be able to make it worthwhile. My place is 500 miles and a 9-hour drive from Austin. I love it. People think I'm crazy, but that windshield time is good for my soul. Tina's nodding her head. She thinks I'm crazy. But would I prefer it be a lot closer? Yes, because anytime I go out there, it's not a, hey, let's leave Friday after work and we'll come back Sunday night. It's when can you take Thursday, Friday, and Monday off to have enough time there to enjoy it and make it worth the trip. So be really careful. If you really love vacationing in a certain spot, ask yourself, is it worth the hassle of getting there on a regular basis? The other thing I'll say is, as far as locations go, you've probably already been there. It's a place that you already know, that you've been vacationing at. It's a place you love, that you're passionate about, that sort of feeds your soul, makes you a better person, that you wish you could have a bigger part in. So as people start to look, oh man, I love beach places. Let's look at Port Aransas. I've never been to Port Aransas. That's not a candidate for me. There's a reason I've never been to Port Aransas. I'm getting that look from Tina. But narrow it down to places that you've already been, that you're already passionate about. And then as far as hunting for places and trying to find a location, there are a few hard stops. And this is my Forrest Gump slide. Can't see it here. Hard stops. If there are HOA restrictions that say you can't have a short-term rental in this location or in this condo, you're done. That is not a candidate for your property. Sometimes there are local code restrictions. City of Austin has a really complicated set of codes that you've got to tiptoe through to make sure that you have a legal vacation rental. And it prevents a lot of what people think they're going to get set up and do. Financing restrictions. Some places and some banks will not give financing or certain types of financing based on what your plan is for that property. You run into some of these, they're just absolutely not. Something that's not on this slide that's really important, I get a ton of questions about shipping container construction. And I am an open book. I will answer anybody's questions about how to do shipping container construction. But the first thing I always ask is, do you know what your local zoning codes say about shipping containers? Find out in the location you want to build, and then call me back and tell me that it's okay for you to do that there. And then we'll talk about what it looks like to build with them. And I have had 0 people call me back. Shipping containers are a special thing. I'm not saying it can't be done. Obviously, I've done it, but there are a lot of restrictions about where you can do them and how you can do them. If you decide to buy an existing vacation rental, then we're looking at it from a slightly different perspective. There's a lot more known information that you need to look at before you purchase that property. Most people who've bought a house are familiar with how real estate is valued. Most real estate has 3 values: an insurance value, a tax value, and a market value. Properties that are used, residential properties that are used as vacation rentals have a 4th value, and that's valued as a business. There's a million different ways to value businesses, whether it's rules of thumb, 3 years of revenue, or 3 years of net profits, or are you using a cap rate to determine the value of it, regardless of what the actual physical property is worth? You're buying a business, not just a property, some combination of the two. But you need to discuss with a professional how to properly value the property. And to do that, you're probably going to have to sign some sort of NDA with the current owners to see their books. I want to know how much money this has been generating for you. Am I buying a profitable business? And if so, that impacts what it's worth. I also want to know why they're selling. They may be selling for a really great reason that makes it attractive to me. My spouse was the one who ran all of this. My spouse passed away. I'm in way over my head. I just want it gone and I need to do it quick. That's a perfect situation. But if they're selling because there's a big condo association assessment coming up, if they're selling because they see the writing on the wall for city code's going to change and they're not going to be able to do this anymore, those are material representations that you need to ask about before you get into it. And then choosing the right location. I want to dive into this a little better. If you're not familiar, this is, in fact, the world's largest ball of twine. So why is it on this slide? What is it that brings people to your property? What is it that makes your property unique? And is it enough to set your property apart from its competition? And so this has a lot of factors. It's what about this area brings people in? If you're looking at doing this locally in the city of Austin, then there's a million answers to that question. Where I'm located in Big Bend, it attracts a lot of different kinds of people for a lot of different reasons, but I needed to figure out what those were, not only to see if I had a viable business model, but also to see whether these were my kind of people. That's that third line. What are the demographics that visit this location? Can't do NOP. NOP is one of my mother's acronyms, not our people. I am not going to open a vacation rental in Branson, Missouri. That's not my people. Terlingua people, the types of folks who go to the desert and do the kinds of things that are out there, they're my people. I get them. We understand each other. And I can market to them, and I can build a property or shape a property that they're going to find attractive. But there's tons of places where that's not the case. So make sure that what you're looking at has that sort of eye contact test. Are the people there your kind of people? Are the kinds of folks that you want to have dinner with? Are the guests you're trying to attract the kind of people you're going to want to sit around after dinner around a campfire and have drinks with? I think that's really important because there's it's important to be really genuine in your marketing, and your passion will show through in that. And you want to be able to have an audience that really understands what you're all about. And then lastly, can they afford your vision? You can look on Airbnb and VRBO at vacation rentals all over the world. If you've got an area in mind, look at the ones that are already there. You can pull up their calendar. You can see their price points, and you can see their occupancy. You can see how many nights per month that they've been rented and what they're charging for it. If everybody else is charging $75 a night, and to make your business plan work, you need to charge $250, what do you have to justify that? And are the people going there interested in a place that's $250 a night? Or does this place attract people who are not interested or able to pay that kind of rate? So can they afford your vision? Does your vision fit the market area that you're looking at? And sometimes there have been a couple of locations that I've considered that I love, that I'm really passionate about, that don't support a business model, where I can't get enough occupancy because of seasonality, and I can't get enough nightly, my nightly rate can't get high enough to support what I want coming out of it as a business model, or even to float. Because I like going some places that have really high seasonality. And guess what? I want to be there during the high season, which means zero revenue. Keep that in mind. Okay, and on that note, I had a couple of real quick examples. Cash flow and profitability can be found in the strangest of places. This is sort of an opposite. The picture on the top is Chicora, Colorado, which is this little tiny town in the middle of nowhere that I've been going every August since I was born. The picture on the bottom is the town of Breckenridge. Buy-in for condos in Chicora, Colorado starts at about $60,000. Buy-in for condos in Breckenridge starts at about $2.5 million. So keep it real. Can that smaller one be profitable? It can under the right circumstances. Can the large one be profitable? Absolutely, and on a larger scale in a lot of cases. However, keep it real for what you're able to do, and don't deplete your own personal cash reserves or be unable to make those mortgage payments on the next property if you experience seasonality or the coronavirus. Here's another one. I'm picking on Port Aransas because I have a client who owns a vacation home in Port A versus Port C. The bottom picture is Copacabana in Brazil. The buy-in for each of these is going to be significantly different. And Port C violates several rules, like it's not a 4-hour drive from here, but you can make it work in either place. The point I'm trying to make is expand your vision of what's possible. Let's talk a little bit about property managers. Property managers oftentimes offer a la carte services ranging from anything from we just clean your property between guests to full service. We do everything. All you do is own a property and collect checks. So here's a list of common things that property managers do for you. Pricing for property managers, we'll talk about on the next slide. I'm personally a big fan of property managers for several reasons, of good property managers for several reasons. Number one, they can cost anywhere from 10 to 30% of your nightly rate. This is going to vary, of course, depending upon where you are, what services you subscribe to. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have full faith and trust in your property managers, especially if they're doing your books. There's lots of questions you should ask when interviewing property managers if you're considering going that route. In property managers' defense, because there are good ones and there are bad ones, here are some things to consider when you're looking at your business plan and going, can I afford a property manager? Do I want to do this myself? Number one, what's your time worth? There's an adage that I adhere to on this that really owning a vacation rental should only take a few hours per week of your time. A lot of times the problem is, though, you don't get to pick which hours they are. So when the toilet starts overflowing at 3 o'clock in the morning and your guests call, you don't have a choice. You got to get up, you got to do something, and you got to solve it. So my next question is, are you capable of managing a property, physically managing a property yourself? Are you handy enough to fix that overflowing toilet? Are you handy enough to know what to do if there's a roof leak? If the air conditioner goes out? We've had some really interesting things happen at our properties, and mine are brand new and very well built, but still problems happen. You've got to be able to respond quickly and make your guests happy. Property managers are professionals at doing this. They're able to do it, and I sleep all the way through the night, and the next day my phone rings and my property manager says, there's been a problem, let me tell you how I solved it. I personally like that. I think it's worth the money. You may not, especially if it's, you know, in your own backyard, something like that. I'm not saying hiring a property manager is a must. Also, if you hire a property manager that manages multiple properties and you're going to want to, in your interview, ask them about their portfolio, who else do they manage? Can I visit with some of your other property owners and ask them about their experience? And if they don't want to answer those questions, don't hire them. But if they have other properties and there's a catastrophic problem with your property, that means your guests really can't stay there. Your managers may be able to transfer them to another property and save that guest experience, save your reviews and save their vacation and make everybody a lot happier. That's happened to me a couple of times for unforeseen things, and it's been really nice and handy to have. And we've already talked about what they cost. Okay, marketing. This is my favorite billboard of all time, and it really tells about the dangers of marketing. Marketing is vital and important, and you have to be in charge of it. The premise of this billboard is that all advertising works, and I'll point out that this particular billboard, and every time you see it, it's not working because you haven't sold that billboard yet. Advertising only works when a guest books your property. Until then, getting eyes on your brand or anything else, you've got to do some of that. But ultimately, there's a marketer out there who's willing to sell you stuff that's not appropriate for your type of business. Owning several different types of businesses, myself, different types of marketing work for different situations. I'm going to talk to you about what does work for me for vacation rentals. Instagram. Instagram is huge. I have an Instagram coach, and I am not a tech person. Clearly, you can tell this by my slide deck. I have an Instagram coach who helps me curate what my Instagram presence looks like, how to leverage relationships with other Instagrammers, how to increase my followers. There's a whole book that can be written about how to interact with Instagram, but it's a great place to promote your site. Early on in this, I went to a fellow LGBT Chamber of Commerce member who does marketing, and I said, I hate marketing, I hate online stuff, I hate Instagram, I don't want to do it. Can I hire you to do it? And the guy's name is Todd Hogan, and he's great. You should hire him if he'll let you. He told me I couldn't hire him. I said, why not? He said, no one is going to be as passionate or interested in this property as you are. You can hire the best marketing firm in the world, but for the type of business you have, it's got to come from you, because people are going to be able to see how excited you are about it. And they'll be able to see that honesty, and they're going to be attracted to it. And he said, you can pay me what you want, but I'm not going to be able to generate that for you. And I really appreciate Todd's honesty for that. Maybe it was a veiled way of saying he really hates the desert, but that's okay. So I haven't found any property owner yet who doesn't manage their own Instagram account, who's not passionate about the property. I think it's critical to have your own website. Go get your own domain. They're not expensive. I built mine with a template on GoDaddy, and it looks great, and it manages a lot of traffic. This is not a symposium on how to manage a good website, so I'll just leave it at that. Property managers, if you hire them, they should promote for you. They should have a website. They should have a Facebook account. They should have an Instagram, and they should help bring in traffic to your property. That may be a service you have to pay extra for. Might be something that you try out for a few months and see how it goes. Majority of my reservations come from Airbnb and VRBO. I think you've got to be on both of these platforms. They do operate a little differently. You don't have to be on both of them. They curate to slightly different demographics. So depending upon your property, you may choose one or the other, but the annual fees to be part of either of these organizations are probably low enough to offset the value of being listed on both. Your competition. We tend to have the scarcity mentality in business of, you know, I've got to try to get everybody. I've got to, and you're the competition. I don't want to be friends with you. Your competition are the people the most like you in the whole wide world. They've also chosen this place as the place they're passionate about. They probably love it for the same reasons you do. They're interested in being an entrepreneur. They're interested in running a micro hotel. You have so much in alignment with these people. You need to friend them. You need to become actual beer drinking friends together or whatever, and follow them on all the social media platforms and cross promote. Because the kinds of people who are booking with them are the kinds of people who will probably book with you and vice versa. And I'm telling you, there's enough people out there for everybody. What if you're booked for those dates? They need someplace else to stay and you give a warm referral. Guess what's going to happen next time their place is booked for those dates? So I think that's vital and important. Join the Chamber of Commerce and the Visitors Bureau at the location of your rental property. I'm part of Visit Big Bend and the Big Bend Chamber of Commerce. Those are really important for me. And they get calls for people saying, hey, we want to come do a story on Big Bend. And they say, great, we've got a place for you to stay. Let me refer you to one of our members. Also, join your local LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Depending upon where your location is, most of my guests come from Austin, Houston, and DFW. And so I'm going to promote in those places. And so when I'm participating in chamber events, I'm going to talk about this. And I can put pen to paper and tell you the many thousands of dollars of revenue that have been generated from those relationships. And that's just the direct business from me telling people about it, not when the chamber promotes me on Facebook or a new member spotlight or anything like that. These are highly profitable relationships, and I encourage you to get really plugged in. Okay, we're almost done. Measuring the health of your business. Once you're up and running, you really need to watch a few key indicators to see, am I doing it right? Are there improvements I can make? What direction is my business growing? An old management saying is the checker gets what the checker checks. I have spreadsheets, massive spreadsheets that monitor a whole lot of analytics about my business. When do people make their reservations? versus when am I the busiest. Some really fascinating data in there, which tells me a lot about how to shape my marketing and where to put my marketing dollars. Total monthly cash flow, especially net profits. How are you divvying up those profits? I have plans for future expansion. So right now I split my net profits into fourths. 1/4 goes to save for taxes and emergencies. 1/4 goes to pay off what money I've borrowed to help put this thing together. 1/4 gets saved for improvements on the property, and 1/4 goes in my pocket that I get to spend however I want to because I work hard and want to enjoy some of the reap the benefits. You don't have to do it that way. That's just the way my brain works and keeps it simple. It's important to track seasonality to be prepared for when the checks stop coming or when they slow down and get a lot smaller, so that you have sufficient cash reserves to be able to weather those storms. Seasonality is predictable. Track marketing sources and constantly reevaluate. If you're not getting anything out of Airbnb, quit paying them that annual fee. If you're not getting anything out of Instagram, you probably need to figure out what you're doing wrong, because Instagram is highly effective for this type of business. And so on and so forth. Look at each one with a critical eye and reevaluate it. I'd say maybe quarterly. And then track opportunity costs. Every time you let a friend go stay at your place for free, you think, it doesn't cost me anything. Yes, it does. If you're booking $200 a night and you just let it out for 4 nights, it costs you $800 to do that friend a favor. Okay? So I'm not saying don't do that. It's real easy to be too nice. And if you start tracking those, and at the end of a quarter, at the end of a year, if you look down and say, wow, I did $6,800 of favors to people, that's a pretty big favor budget. So I would highly encourage offering the friends and family discount. Anybody that books my property through the Chamber of Commerce or that I personally know, I tell them, hey, don't book on the website, call my property manager, email her, tell her you get the friends and family discount, the Chamber of Commerce discount. And that's enough. I think that we're not, you're a good friend, but I don't feel like cutting a check for $800. That's enough for most people. Now then, close family and things like that, of course, I'm going to let them stay for free. But a lot of people don't track that and they don't realize, hey, if I want to go stay there over spring break, that's my busiest week of the year where I charge the highest rates. So if I were to take my family to my place for spring break, 2 properties times $250 a night, you do the math. Let's go the week after, the week before. Oh, I can't take your kids? Maybe we can go in the summer. I love my family, but not $10,000 a week love them. And with that, I'm going to open up for questions. And I'm happy to answer questions about shipping container construction, about Big Bend, about business models, about cash flow, whatever you got going on. I'm happy to answer questions if you can.
Thanks, I appreciate that. So for those who are on the call, if you can drop your questions into chat because you are kind of forced and muted. Sorry about that. We will rebroadcast this on our website, so if you missed something, you can go back and check it. But Chase, I know you and I have talked many a time about whether or not it makes sense for my second property to be a rental. And now that I'm in it and love it, there is this fear of, oh my God, I'm going to turn this over to a bunch of frat guys on the weekend. Yep. So how does a vacation, or how do you kind of reconcile that or protect yourself against damage from somebody who's in there renting your property?
Great question. Before I answer that, I'm going to go to the next slide, and which is the last slide. I'm going to put my contact information up here. If you want to email me, info@fossilknobridge.com. And my only ask of people on this call is that you follow me on Instagram. I'm at Fossil Knob Ridge. I'm going to leave this up on the screen as we do our Q&A. Please get your phones out, get on your Instagram, get on the gram, and shoot me a like. I really appreciate it. We've got some really great content on there. And as much as I didn't want to be on Instagram, I've kind of fell in love with it. It's the way I look at it is it's one of the ways that I get to share my passion and the beauty of this place that I'm fortunate enough to be a part of. So I hope that bleeds through in my Instagram account. And as you look through it and see all the fun stuff on there, you can see that too. So for Tina's question, how do I protect my property against strangers being in it and potentially tearing it up? Or just how do I swallow that pill mentally of sharing this place that I'm really passionate about? A couple of things. Number one, I use property managers, and they're incredibly good at cleaning and now disinfecting the property. And every time I show up to my place, which I built with being a vacation rental in mind, every time I show up, it is absolutely spotless. The only evidence of guests having been there is they like to collect fossils and stack them on the porch. And I think that's adorable. And so it's a little reminder that that other people love this place as much as I do. So mentally, I think it's important to remind yourself that you're probably sharing this with people who love it for the same reasons you do. There are some ways to safeguard against sharing it with people who don't love it for the same reasons you do, so that they can go out and have frat parties. Number one, you can discriminate based on age. You cannot discriminate based on sexual orientation, religious affiliation, blah, blah, blah. But you can say, I don't rent to people under 25 years of age. You can discriminate against party size. I don't rent to parties of more than 4. You can also, hesitate to say the word discriminate, but you can also price people out of that market. You want to come stay at my place, you better be willing to cough up X dollars a night, and that's going to take care of a lot of college kids. That said, I've had some younger groups stay at my place who absolutely loved it. They're in tune with Instagram, and they've done some of the most amazing promotions for me without me having to ask, because they were in tune with it. There is some practical issues of, you don't want the good china there. I use a lot of Wayfair furniture. It fits, I can find stuff on there that fits the motif, and it's really durable, but it's not a family heirloom. And if it gets messed up, then I can get on Wayfair and order a replacement. So far, I haven't had to do any of that. I've had a couple of chips and plates and a couple of glasses get broken in 2 years of really high traffic occupancy. So I've had a lot of luck as far as people taking care of the place. And I think they treat it a little differently than a hotel. They know it's someone's home. And if you're interacting with them, or your property managers are interacting with them on a personal basis, they kind of treat it a little bit better. At least that's been my experience. And my friends who own these, they talk about their guests like family. So I really haven't seen a lot of that, but there are some practical issues you need to take into account when preparing your property to be a vacation rental.
Great, thanks for that. A couple of questions have come in and around. Well, I'll hit you with a couple, and then we can kind of decide how much we have time for. Okay. One of the questions was buy versus rent, or buy versus build, the pros and cons of that, and then whether or not you should form, whatever version you do, whether or not you should form an LLC for that entity, and kind of managing that piece of it. And then lastly, and we'll wrap it up after that, and I'll remind you of the questions. As you're moving from one platform to another, you can tend to lose your reviews. And so, weighing whether or not that makes sense to do all that. So
awesome. Let me tackle the LLC question first. Yes, absolutely set up an LLC. Again, I'm not an attorney. I cannot give legal advice, but that's something that Google can pretty easily tell you. Shout out to the Lynch Law Firm, who's part of the LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Natalie did an excellent job setting up my LLC. Not only do you need a special kind of insurance for these properties, but you also need the added layer of protection of having an LLC. You've got people in there. If someone trips and falls, somebody gets hurt, then you're on the hook, and you need to make sure that you have a big fat liability insurance policy that's the right type for this kind of place. And you need that layer of protection so that if anybody gets sued, it's your LLC and not you, and they can't penetrate that veil to your personal assets. But again, consult with your attorney or a business attorney. about what's right for you. For me, an LLC was correct, but there's other ways to set it up, series LLCs, sub S corps, and all sorts of fun stuff, and it may be different for your personal situation. As far as changing between the platforms, you're going to have Yelp reviews, you're going to have Google reviews, you're going to have TripAdvisor reviews, you're going to have VRBO reviews, you're going to have Airbnb reviews. Trying to herd all of the funnel, all of those into one venue is, if you figure out how to do it, write the book and I'll be the first one to buy it. But you're going to get a smattering of them everywhere. So my philosophy, and I'm sure there's others out there that may be smarter and better, my philosophy has been wherever you post reviews, post one for us and post one that shows how much fun that you had and lets other people know how passionate you are about this place. Some of our reviews just happen in the guest book. So guess what? I take pictures of our guest book and post them on my Instagram. I just don't even try to manage the venues where the reviews show up. I just encourage people to leave them because you never have enough good ones. And I'm sorry, Tina, what was the first? Oh, rent versus build, or buy versus build. It's situational. I'll tell you my story. I built for a couple of reasons. Number one, interlingua, where my place is, the only thing that out there that's cheap is land. Building is not cheap. Existing structures are not cheap, but you can buy acreage ridiculously cheap. And I wound up buying my property from a friend who needed to get rid of it. And I had no idea in 2009 that 8 years later, I would be starting a vacation rental business. I just knew it was a good deal. I was passionate and loved the area. And we were able to help each other out by me purchasing this land from her. I personally saved a ton of money because I grew up on a ranch and I know construction. So I did a ton of the construction myself. Where I needed to, I hired Caleb Thompson of Austin Construction Pros, who's also an Austin LGBT Chamber of Commerce member. And he went out to Big Bend with me and spent a few weeks out there helping me with some of the construction elements that I either needed a licensed technician for or that was beyond my pay grade. She don't hang sheetrock. I'm smart enough to know I don't do sheetrock. So it made sense for me to build. I also wanted to do this crazy shipping container idea. My uncle's an architect and he came up with that and it was brilliant. And because I know how to weld and I've got a plasma cutter in my shop downstairs, I did shipping containers and saved a ton of money, which really helped my business plan out. However, I can tell you a few things. Number one, you can spend as much or easily more on shipping container construction than you do with a stick build. Number two, if you decide to build, your startup costs now aren't fixed. Anyone who's built a house knows you get your estimate and you should double the time it's going to take and double the money it's going to take. There's always going to be an upgrade. There's always going to be something that's going to get out of control and there's no way out but through. So building introduces a lot of variables into the process. And it also lengthens the amount of time from when you start this process to when you become profitable. So you're going to be able to float that and not wreck any of your personal finances or emergency reserves with some kind of bridge loan. So that said, yeah, absolutely you can build. I did. It was really smart. It may not be the right fit for everybody. There is an advantage to having a turnkey. I bought a condo and all I had to do was put new carpet and fill it with a bunch of Wayfair furniture and build a website. Man, you can be up and running in a matter of weeks. So it can work either way. It's really site specific. I'm happy to visit with anybody who's considering it to help them kind of walk through that decision-making paradigm.
Great stuff. Thank you so much. Thanks for those who attended. And if you're not following Fossil Knowbridge, I follow because it's always entertaining, engaging, and it's just so unique. And there is that added element of the shipping container and what that lifestyle looks like. He's almost convinced me to drive 9 hours.
I'll take you out there with me.
So thank you so very much for your time and expertise. I know you've been asked these questions a million times, so we appreciate you kind of putting it all in one consolidated spot. If you missed anything, be sure to check it out on the Austin LGBT Chamber. We have a link on there for all of the webinars that we've had over the course of the last probably 70 days since COVID shut down. But then also reach out to Chase directly at info@fossilknobridge.com. Thank you guys so much for your time. We really appreciate you sharing.
Thanks, everybody. Really enjoyed spending time with you. Look forward to visiting with you more.
Cheers.